Welcome back to the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, where we go book by book and delve into the stories and histories of this beloved saga. I'm your host, Shivam Putt, and with me today is my friend John Howard. Hi, John.
Hey, Shivam, how's it going?
Great.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And today, we're going to be continuing our trek through Dragons of Autumn Twilight, the first book in this series, starting with Chapter 4. Now, the last time we were here, we left through the kitchen in one of the most iconic lines in the entire saga. But where do they end up going?
They flee to Tika's house. On their way out, she said, "Go to my place. They won't look for you there." Tanis happens to know where it is for some reason. Wink, wink.
Solace is a very small town, and all the houses are in trees, and if you've lived there long enough, you basically know where everybody lives.
That's true. The companions make their way there. They're still kind of stunned about what they've just witnessed.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the last thing they see is, holy crap, this barbarian woman's got a staff that turns bright blue and heals people, which is something that hasn't been seen in like over 350 years. I mean, you see that right in the beginning of the chapter where the companions are sitting there in Tika's house, and Tanis like, "What do you think?" And Raistlin, of course, being the most cynical and like heartless of all of them, is like, "Look, if she's a charlatan, she's a good one." Everyone's like, "How dare you call my girlfriend a charlatan?" You know, they all start to get all cranky at each other. But Goldmoon says, "Hey, you know what? He doesn't know who we are. They don't know us. They don't understand what we have. So let's chill out."
What's surprising is that, like, in 3 chapters, we're going to find out that, like, they just got here. That's just the part that, and like, she's like, they don't know what we have or who we are. And it's like, wait, Goldmoon, you guys don't know what you have or where you are.
Yeah.
Like, she's remarkably calm for like what we realize has happened to them in the next 3 chapters. It's just
once we go, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
But given the day she's had, even in the last 2 hours,
yeah,
Goldmoon does something that she's basically iconic for in the entire saga, which is being a calm, level-headed,
the most chill.
Yeah, and just like, and she's like, "Look, one step at a time, we will solve this problem. Chill." And she's got the authority and weight of being, you know, the chieftain's daughter. She's like the princess of her people, and she can just be like, "Yo, sit down, shut up, we're gonna handle this." And everybody's like, yes, because they're like, because she's kind and gentle, and also just no nonsense. Does not take anything from you. For all the fact that she's got to be what, maybe 28 or something in this series.
I was gonna say she was like
25,
17.
Something like that. Just super young.
They don't know if it's a charade, but Raistlin can't detect it, and he asks to see the staff, and Riverwind doesn't trust any of them, so he's not. But Goldmoon like says, "Yeah, should do it," and so he goes to touch it, and like he jumps up, there are sparks, he yelps, and he's like, "I can't touch it." And then he says, "Only good," and this is quotes, "or pure people can." And that just like, that's alarming. All his friends should be like, "What?"
Yeah. First off, they're all like, the description here is really, really riveting. It's like the mage stretches out his long, bony arm, his thin hands grasping for it eagerly. I'm like, okay, that's a vivid looking metaphor. When you think about the fact that Raistlin's skin is bright gold, and he's got those crazy eyes, and he's reaching this golden arm out to grab this stick, and everybody's staring at him, and the stick immediately goes blue and just zaps him and flings him across the room. And everybody's like, "Wait, what the hell?" And everybody's like, "What is going on? How does this injure you?" And he's like, "Just hang on. Caramon, go pick up the staff." And Caramon's like, "I'm not messing with that." He's like, "No, dude, take it." And of course, he picks it up, and it's just a wooden staff, NBD. And the reason is because Raistlin, in his red robes, as we learned, red is not a good color. Red is a neutral color. Because in this world, good, neutral, and evil are all equal poles that have equal weight and also are affected by different things. So if you've got this staff, this blue crystal staff that we're told is a staff of healing, and suddenly a dude who's neutral or wearing a red robe, even we don't even know what neutral is in this, but a dude wearing a red robe picks this up and is just zapped as if he was one of those goblins in the inn. There's something going on here. This isn't just your average, ordinary blue crystal staff that heals people.
Well, and it's an interesting dynamic that they're setting up here between the three colors, right?
Mm,
And the three alignments.
yes.
Because there are because you find out at some point there are clerics of evil gods, right? And there are neutral clerics, right? And so like you said, there's different items that react differently to those. Yeah, it's an interesting way that they play with the typical D&D alignment structure.
Yeah, I mean, because one of the things is like in traditional D&D, in old school 70s D&D, the alignments they had were lawful, neutral, and chaotic. And lawful obviously was meant to represent knights and order and good. Chaotic was meant to be like evil, amoral, that sort of thing. And neutral is just like, I've got things to do and I'm here. But they added with AD&D the good, neutral, evil axis, giving us this, 9 grid that we have. So you can get everything from lawful good to chaotic evil and everything in between. Each of these alignments kind of has a different resonance and the way of approaching the world. And Dragonlance, being Tracy Hickman's child, focused very heavily on the good, neutral, evil axis. Lawful good and chaotic good and everything, they apply. I mean, it's a difference between Sturm Brightblade and Tassel Burfoot, but not nearly as strongly as the idea that there's good, there's neutral, and there's evil. We haven't really talked about the pantheons here, but each of the pantheons, the good, neutral, and evil, has 7 gods or 6 gods and 1 moon each. Each of them are equally balanced, and this notion of the balance between these 3 forces is the driving force of this saga.
He's flung back. They're like, okay, well, this staff isn't normal. And then they realize, oh, they're not going to stop here. We're in trouble. We have to keep going. They start to hear the goblins are doing a house by house search of Solace. They forgot to lock the door. You can tell these adventurers are a little rusty. Mm-hmm. They bust in. There's a fight. They flee again. Along the way, there's some hasty introductions between Goldmoon and Riverwind and Tanis. The book kind of sets up that Tanis is the leader. Everyone looks to him, and he kind of shouts some orders, and everyone does what he says. And they fall into that familiar rhythm.
I mean, Tanis is the leader of the companions for a reason, right? He's got the level-headedness. He's got the ability to direct them and to everybody respects and listens to him. And I think you're right. This scene is a very short chapter, but it definitely helps set the dynamic of what's going on. Raceland will tell Caramon what to do. Caramon will do what Raceland says, but everybody will do what Tanis says.
And Goldmoon is chill.
Yeah, and Goldmoon is definitely here to be okay, sit down and let's not be hasty. And everybody will listen to her because she's got the weight of authority.
They start to make some plans. Right after the struggle with the goblins, they decide, how do we get out of here? Where do we need to go? And they decide the best way to flee is there's a lake right next to Solace. What's the name of the lake, Shivam?
Crystal Mirror.
Yeah, Crystal Mirror. And they're we can steal a boat, we can make our way across, and then the goblins can't reach us. And they're headed for to the high road to get to the town of
Haven.
Yeah, because that's where Goldmoon and Riverwind want to apparently there are wise people there and they want to hand the stick over to them.
So basically, a geography lesson, if we will. So here we are in the city of Solace. Now, Solace is in this region called Abyssinia, which is this area of Krynn. And it's just this place, but after the Cataclysm, it is an unincorporated place. This is not like a country. This is a region that has plains people. It has these humans and elves. It's on the border of Qualinesti. It's on the border of Thorbarden. All it is over here is a handful of just small towns and cities. And Haven is the biggest city in the area. It's also, as we'll learn, the home of the Seekers, who are the big fake religion that's going on here. And the closest thing they have to kind of a political capital in this area. But there's no unity. It just happens to be a settlement that's close by that's bigger than the one we're at. That kind of takes us out of chapter 4.
Yeah, into chapter 5. They decide to steal a boat. Everyone says, don't tell Flint. Because it turns out in the past, Flint was nearly drowned by some of the companions in a previous adventure. And if they tell him, he won't come with them, and they don't want to separate. So they're chased through the woods. It's dark. The moon starts rising. It's hard. There's a big argument on the shore where Flint says, I'm not going to go. I can't do it. Leave me here. So they say, okay, we're going to leave you. And they all get in the boat and they start going away. And then all of a sudden, his little arm's pumping. He runs. Flint says, wait for me. And he's coming and he hits the water. I mean, I guess this is true for dwarfs. He just sinks like a stone right into the water.
So imagine a dwarf, first off, he's like maybe 4 feet tall at best. And he weighs like 350 pounds or something. He's a big, stout, old dwarf. He's 150 years old, 148, they say. And that's effectively the equivalent of being something like in your mid 60s for a human. He's not a spring chicken anymore. And he's definitely not into the idea of water, right? I mean, if you're a dwarf and you can't swim and you're just going to sink, I wouldn't want to go out on a lake either. As Caramon and Sturm are having the conversation, as Caramon turns to Sturm and he's like, what's happening back there? And Sturm's like, Flint says he'll burn before he gets in a boat. Then at least he'll die warm instead of wet and cold.
They turn around. They have to fetch him out of the water. So Caramon's struggling to do that. The goblins are on the shore. They're shooting arrows.
Yeah, so the only thing that gets Flint to get into a boat is the fact that there's a horde of goblins running after him. And so you see Flint just bust out of the woods, like hauling ass down the road, trying to jump into the water. And so the gents in the boat will start giving him, arrow cover. And Flint just runs and runs and runs and then plunges into the water, sinks like a rock. And then they're like, grab him. There he is. Look for the bubbles because he's legit just straight drowning.
I like to imagine that he's calmly walking on the bottom of the lake as the dwarf. He's like, I don't need any of this. If you just left him to it, he would have been fine.
Just cement shoes, just trucking it down.
They're being struck by arrows. They're trying to private cover. There's just too many goblins there. And we see Raistlin cast his second spell of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a big thing where, he says some words, mixes some ingredients. He puts all the goblins to sleep. They all just collapse. And at first, everyone thinks that they're dead. But no, they're just asleep. This also causes Raistlin to collapse.
Yeah, because Raistlin's a low-level mage. And the thing about Wizards in Dragonlance is that it's very much old-school D&D Wizards. So in D&D, the spell system there is called Vancian magic, named after the famed fantasy author Jack Vance, where the idea here is that a wizard has immense power, but the trade-off is that they have to spend part of their day memorizing spells out of their spell books and scrolls, and when they use a spell, it erases itself from their memory until they can spend time to rememorize and relearn these spells. So Raistlin here, being a brand new wizard, having just passed the test, he's maybe like a level 4 human or something like that. He's got like 2 spells memorized or something. Like his staff gives him light for free, which is just lucky. But when he uses a spell, it takes from his energy, from his bodily energy. So that's how they depict that he's forgotten and has to rest, is that he casts a spell and then just passes out. Sleep is not a very strong spell, but he can get the fact that he can use it to hit like a whole battalion of those goblins. And the spell that they do, he picks up sand, which is the famed material component for casting a sleep spell because, enter Sandman. You've got like the sand of dreams and all that sort of like imagery there. So he throws a handful of sand and says these words in the spell language that Tracy Hickman used by modifying the Indonesian to turn into the language of magic in Dragonlance. Cast a sleep spell. And so that way we know that, this actually is a wizard who can do things and not just like, a cynical emo kid.
At the end of the chapter, Tanis has some inner dialogue where he's seen the magic, doesn't trust the mage. I think there's some previous history here. Looking in my book here, I believe it's Raistlin when he collapses. It gives him the opportunity to look up in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And he notices, as he says, he grabs... Yeah, so he says to Tanis, Tanis, the constellations. And Tanis is like, what are you talking about? What about the constellations?
What happened is the first thing is that Goldmoon and Riverwind are sitting there and kind of huddling. And this is the first time they've had a chance to sit down since they've fled. They're finally together after however long. And she stares up at the night sky trying to be all romantic, stiffens up and gasps. And then everybody's like, wait, what's going on? Race is like, Caramon turns to Raceland and says, hey, wait, what's going on? Raceland looks up, coughs, has his spasm, and then his eyes widen. He grabs Tannis, and he's like, the constellations. And Tannis like, what about the constellations? They're gone. The Queen of Darkness and the Valiant Warrior. Both are gone. She has come to Krynn, Tannis, and he has come to fight her. All the evil rumors we've heard are true. And war, death, and destruction, and then he just collapsed into another fit of coughing.
And Caramon is like, it's just a bunch of stars. And Tannis is like, yeah, it's just a bunch of stars, because it's totally normal when constellations disappear.
Yeah, it's just stars in the sky. Like, even without divinity, even without magic, if like you're staring up at the sky and the Big Dipper just straight disappears, that is going to cause you and literally every human to panic. Right? Like, that is terrifying to think about, the idea of stars just vanishing from the sky. But in Dragonlance, these stars have an extra meaning, because the stars, each of the constellations in Dragonlance, represents one of the gods. I guess we should have this discussion now about what the gods are, and to kind of explain this. We've got 3 pantheons, like I said, good, neutral, and evil. The good gods and the evil gods each have their own sets of constellation representing their symbols in the sky. So Paladine is the platinum dragon, Takesis is the 5-headed chromatic dragon. They stare at each other, and they surround this constellation of the book, which is Gillian, the lead god of neutrality. On either side, their families and children have their constellations too. Mishakal, the goddess of healing, has her infinity symbol. Kiri Jolith has his bison head. And then the gods of evil also have theirs. Sargonas, the god of war, has his like big giant evil like phoenix thing. Hidukul, the god of like bad bargains and evil like thievery and lust and stuff, has his broken scales, etc., etc.
Just so you know, folks, none of that is in this first book.
No, but it will show up.
Yeah, it's just Shivam dropping the deep lore on us.
I mean, look, dude, it helps to understand, though, right? The problem is that these are just for the good and neutral, good and evil gods. The neutral gods are represented by planets. Rheorx, the god of dwarves, has his own planet. Zivlin, the god of wisdom, has his own planet, etc. And then one god from each of the pantheons, the children of these gods, became the 3 moons, the gods of magic. So you've got Solinari, the white moon, Lunitari, the red moon, and Nuitari, the black moon. They, because they're gods of arcane magic as opposed to divine magic, they chose to be closer to the humans, and they left their positions in the heavens to come and circle the planet as moons and to power the spells of all the wizards, which we will understand more as we go. That is why when the constellation of the gods disappear, that's not just the stars disappearing. That's the gods themselves actually taking an active role in the prime material plane.
Well, and it's interesting because, you know, the big thing has been that the gods have been gone, right, for the last 300 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out, like, no, they were there the whole time.
Staring down.
You could see their constellations. Now they're actually gone, right? Like, now the gods are gone because their constellations are gone. And we'll start seeing some effects of that very soon.
Now things are getting real. And that's the end of chapter 5. A very, very ominous kind of start here.
We pick back up in chapter 6, right as they're still crossing the lake. It starts to rain. They find a cave, and everyone sets up in there. Raceland is worn out. Goldmoon offers to use the staff to heal him, and he explains that, no, it won't heal me. He says, don't waste the staff's resources, and this is a question we can talk about mechanics later, because I'm wondering if her magic staff also has charges.
Oh, it does.
But also he explains, as Shivan did, he explains to the reader about the magic, right? He has sacrificed his health for his magic, so it can't be healed, right? This was a bargain he made. It's not like he cut his hand or he got sick. This is a willing
trade-off.
He's a willing participant in this transaction, so there's no healing it, right? The magic was cast, his health is gone. That's the trade.
So we should probably spend 10 seconds to talk about that too, I guess, right? Like, these early chapters are so full of deep world building, and it's so important and it's so good. Weiss Hickman do a very good job of explaining, taking D&D mechanics and translating them into a novel form, and then also filtering them through the Dragonlance world itself. What Raceland's talking about here is as we learned in the beginning, he's taken the test of high sorcery. And the test of high sorcery is a mage who wants to become a wizard in Dragonlance at the level 4, once they can start learning actual spells, has to go through the test to become kind of get a license to be a mage. And this also gives them the robes that they wear, whether it can be white for good, red for neutral, or black for evil, because everything is color coded in Dragonlance. The trade-off is this test forces them to make a decision between something that they truly love and desire or giving everything they have to the magic. Raceland sacrificed his body and his health in order to have access to this power. Later on, we meet a mage named Justarius, who is like the head of the Red Robes, and he walks with a limp because he was a sportsman before he became a wizard and had to trade off his ability to actually be active and participant and stuff or dedicate himself to the magic. Raceland here is sitting there saying, like, look, I cast a spell, I'm exhausted. Your healing won't help me because I'm not hurt in that way. I'm spiritually hurt, but not physically hurt. So your spell is not going to change anything. What you mentioned about resources there is also true. These blessed artifacts are not like infinite sources of energy. They've got like a limited amount of healing power available to them before they have to be recharged somehow. Now, there are no clerics in this world. There are no temples in this world. So there's no real way to recharge this. And Raceland's sitting there going like, look, I don't want you to blow healing charges trying to help me out of a problem that you can't fix anyways. So he sits there and says like, just give me my tea and leave me alone.
And then there's a bit of a dust-up over honor between Sturm and Riverwind. This gives us some insight into these two characters. They're both stuffy. And they're both very formal. I will be honest with you, I've had a hard time. I've always struggled with liking Sturm as a character.
Oh, man. So here's the thing, right? Riverwind and Sturm are both very stubborn, very honor-bound kind of characters, but for different reasons. So Riverwind and Sturm are sitting there, and he's like, Sturm says, I'll take first watch because he's a knight, and the knights have this code, which is Solace, which means my honor is my life, right? My honor is my life. They say it over and over and over again. And that is basically their entire pride and their self-worth is tied into their honor, and their honor is in their word. And if I say I'm going to do a thing and I'm a knight, by God, I'm going to do it. And if you distrust me, then you're distrusting my word, and my word is my honor, and my honor is my life, and then we're going to have to fight about it. It's all about pride and layers of ego. But Riverwind, so Sturm says, I'm going to take first watch. And Riverwind says, I will watch with you. And Sturm says, how could you? I've said I will. And if you doubt me, I'm going to fight you. And Riverwind is like, it's not that I doubt you. It's that I am terrified and I don't trust anybody. And I have my lady here and she's got the staff. And I don't trust anybody to protect us because I don't even know you.
He's dealing with a lot of shit, Riverwind is.
Yeah, like right now, he had just come, like, we don't know anything about where they've come from yet, but we already know that they've been through a lot of trauma in the last 4 chapters, right? And Riverwind sits there and says, like, look, I'll be honest with you. It's fear. It's my fear that makes me talk like this. And I don't trust anybody. And Sturm here shows his compassion, and he's like, look, I get it. You're tired. You've been sick. Rest, and I will take watch. I promise you. And he goes and steps outside.
And then Riverwind passes out from fever.
Yeah. Riverwind's sick, and he's in the rain, and he's having a bad day, and he just conks out.
He also collapses, much like Raceland, but for other reasons.
Yeah, for actual physical healable reasons, right?
So the party rests. Sturm is on watch. Riverwind's passed out. He's being taken care of. Tanis asks Taz to pull out some maps. They have to come up with a plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a funny little moment here where as he's looking for his maps, he pulls out one of Tanis's rings, and Tanis goes like, isn't that mine? And he goes, oh, well, it's a good thing I found it for you, Tanis. You must have lost it.
See, this is one of the most iconic things about Kender that we discover now, is that Kender are basically like children. By that, I mean, they will go around, if they see a shiny, they will just take it. And it's not out of like guile or out of like
malice.
It's just out of like, oh, I picked it up and then I forgot that I had it. Because just like your average 7-year-old, they're going to pick up a thing, put it down somewhere because they were distracted by the next thing and completely forget it.
And if you ask them for it, they'll give it back to you.
Yeah.
If you ask them for it, they'll be like, oh, you must have dropped it. How else would I have got it?
I was keeping it safe for you. Man, where would you be if I didn't have your stuff? You know, it's all definitely a lot of like, gosh, you're so irresponsible losing all your rings like this. Here you go, man. Keep it next time and I won't have to save it for you. It's like, sure, Taz. Yeah, that's exactly what
You guys are all so clumsy and forgetful.
happened. Well, yeah, the other thing we learned though is that Taz is a very consummate map maker. And so he pulls out all of his like toys and pouches that he was sorting out, throws them in, and pulls out this hand carved wooden scroll that has like hundreds and hundreds of like pieces of paper and parchment and palmetto leaves and everything that's got random maps to anywhere on there.
And they realize that there's only one way to Haven, which is where the Plains people, where Goldmoon and Riverwind are going.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of have a discussion about who's going to go and where we're going to go. And then they all say, well, we're all too tired. Let's deal with it in the morning. Turns out it rains all night. They don't have any food. So they're not really in a great place in the morning either. They're all on edge. And so they finally discuss, well, what are we going to do? We'll go to Haven first. And then maybe if no one there knows anything about blue staffs and healing magic, we can go to the Elvish lands. Riverwind, he's not very happy with this. He's like, we should really get out of here, Goldmoon. I don't trust these people. And she tells him once again to chill.
Mm-hmm.
And Sturm, there's a dialogue by Sturm where he's like, why am I listening to this bastard elf? Like, he really does say it that way. He's like, I'm a knight.
Yeah.
I'm important. I'm somebody. He's like, Tanis is nobody, but like, I still listen to him and I follow him.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's this great quote, Sturm, where it almost makes you like Sturm. As I said, he's kind of stuffy, but he's like, the code had held true for 700 years, but Sturm's secret fear was that someday in the final battle, the code would have no answers. He knew that if that day came, Tanis would be at his side, holding the crumbling world together. For while Sturm followed the code, Tanis lived it.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
I think that says, one, it says a lot about Tanis, but like it also says a lot about Sturm. Like you said, his pride is why he's following this, but his heart is not in it, right? Like he feels like there's an obligation here. This is something he has to do, not because he wants to do it, not because he loves it, but like there's a duty. It seems like it's an obligation, where for Tanis, it's just how he lives his life.
Exactly. And that's like the difference between like putting your faith in practice versus just proclaiming your belief. Sturm here, as we learn later, Sturm's entire life is like destabilized, right? Like he's in Solace instead of being in Solamnia where he belongs as a knight. His father is not here. He was raised by his mother because his father was killed by people who were uprising against the knights. All he has is literally motto and this like creed that his father followed, and his father's like armor and swords and things. That is the only thing he clings to as his identity. But for Tanis, living his honor is just being a good person and living his life right. So Sturm is sitting there like, look, I don't trust myself to do anything because I understand that my identity is so wrapped up into this that I am willing to offload all of my like leadership and all of my like needs onto Tanis to actually control the boat, because Sturm is at least wise enough to recognize that he's got personal limitations here.
Well, and that maybe even the code does, right? Like I can't.
Yeah, like
I'm so busy trying to figure out how I'm supposed to dot these I's and cross these T's that I don't even know what I'm supposed to be writing. And so it's like, Tanis, I'm going to let you handle what we're doing, and I'll just make sure it gets done correctly.
Exactly.
And that gets us to chapter 7. The story of the staff, strange clerics, eerie feelings. They bushwhack for a good part of the day. To pass the time, Goldmoon tells Tanis her and Riverwind's story. And I missed this the first, 3 times I read this book as a kid. I totally forgot how this happened, where she says, 2 days ago...
Right?
2 days ago, Riverwind came back to our village after he'd been away for a long time on this quest to win my hand in marriage. My dad is the chieftain. Riverwind is, like a nobody.
It's just a random peasant or something. Not even a peasant, just like, they live in a tribe. He's a low-ranking farmer, hunter, or someone in there.
But they love each other. And so her dad was like, look, you got to go find a thing. And so 2 days ago, after many years of being away, Riverwind shows up. He has the staff, but he's also raving mad and has a fever.
Mm-hmm.
And when people ask him, like, well, where have you been? What is that staff? He says, in a broken city with some winged monstrosity guarding it.
Yeah, a broken city where death had black wings.
Yeah. A blue glowing woman gave him the staff. And then he presented the staff to Goldmoon's father as a gift from a goddess. But when the chief tried to use it, it didn't do anything. And so he ordered Riverwind to be stoned to death.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, you've been gone for years, for the love of your life. You show up, you've had some sort of supernatural religious experience. And then when you go to be like, here's the thing, he says, I don't believe it. It doesn't do anything. And I'm going to stone you to death.
Well, there's more to it than that, though, right? Like, because Goldmoon also says, like, hey, Riverwind's family was already outcast from the village because their family worshipped the ancient gods who existed before the Cataclysm and not the ancestors that we worshipped in our tribe. And these guys refused to give these beliefs away, and we're still sticking to it. We right there are given this notion that, first off, Riverwind is another one of these true believers, Dermis or Tanis's, who've been looking for these old gods, which gives them a reason to be with the companions in the first place. They're all seeking the actual faith, right?
Also, stop 1 second here. Go back to the little Mormon corner here.
Mm-hmm.
This is a direct, we are basically seeing in a little shorthand here the story of the Nephites and the Lamanites, who the LDS Church believes are the ancestors of Native Americans. And in Mormon religious thought, the Lamanites were the evil ones who worshipped not the real gods, and the Nephites are the ones who worshipped the real gods, and the Lamanites killed all the Nephites. They eliminated them. And so that's just what we just talked about here. The chief who worships ancestors, not the real gods, has expelled Riverwind and his family who do worship the real gods, or the Nephites, and he's going to kill them. This is the Book of Mormon right here. This is a little tiny piece of the Book of Mormon summed up right here.
Boy, Tracy Hickman was not at all subtle if you knew what you're looking for, was he?
No, not at all.
Oh my God. I've read this book 10,000 times, and I would have never picked that up.
Yeah, no, it's right there, right? We worship our ancestors. The Lamanites didn't worship the real gods, and they expelled and fought and killed all the
true believers,
Native Americans who did, just like what's happening here.
Yeah, so that's wild. That's wild. That's so cool. Goldmoon's dad is like, no, you're not going to marry a scrub like that who's from an outcast family or anything. But they have this thing where you have to go find a quest and go find some holy object that's going to show me about these gods. Because the old man didn't believe that these things existed, and Riverwind would just drop dead somewhere.
He thought this was the easy way to get rid of the guy who was going to marry his daughter.
To be fair, Riverwind's gone years. So basically he won. He was like, yeah, you're out, peace. But Riverwind comes back and he starts just blabbing insane nonsense, right? He comes back half dead with a staff and says, a glowing blue lady protecting me from death on black wings. Like, you are insane. So we're just going to kill you because you're crazy and I don't want you marrying my daughter. Well, Goldmoon, of course, being, the one true one waiting for her love to come back, they go and take Riverwind and bind him to the grieving wall, and they start throwing rocks at him. And then, of course, Goldmoon can't stand the thought, so she jumps in front. She gets cut and puts a hand to her forehead, and Tanis realizes that he's missed seeing this jagged kind of cut on her forehead.
Tiny little scar, yeah.
And then, of course, there's a blinding flash of blue light. When River and I can see again, we're standing on the road outside of Solace with a blue glowing staff that dims and fades until it goes back to wood. We're healed again, and that's the beginning of the story.
And then we walked into town, and we met you guys.
Yeah.
Just the other day.
Literally yesterday.
Riverwind has not had a break.
No.
Multi-year quest, gets home, stoned, transported. Like, no wonder he's lost it.
I mean, let's stop for a second. They just got teleported.
Yeah.
They got teleported hundreds of miles from the plains out to the middle of the woods to Solace. If that's not the most disorienting possible thing you can imagine for somebody who's not Dragonlance is not a high magic setting. This is not a place where wizards are walking around lighting candles all the time. This is a place where magic is rare and feared and scary. And this thing that he has found has teleported them across the continent and it just deposited them here in front of this weirdo town full of trees.
One is like they don't have any control over it. It'd be one thing if he knew how to use it.
No, they have no idea. They were about to die.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know what the staff does. She's like, well, let me just touch you with... That does make that scene at the beginning kind of weird, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
She's like, well, I guess I could just touch you with the staff. I think it does something. And then this whole saga starts. I think this might be one of the first actual plot holes in the book where it's like, hey, man, she doesn't actually know what's supposed to be happening, and yet suddenly she does.
Yeah.
That seems a little sketch.
They're telling this story. Right about when she finishes up, Tasselhoff, who's been scouting out ahead of them on the road to Haven, comes back, and he says, hey, there's a bunch of strange clerics on the road. I think you guys need to come up and see what's going on. So the party decides to hide, and then Sturm just stands on the middle of the road, and he waits for the clerics to arrive.
Yeah, but hang on, though. There's an important scene here between Riverwind and Tanis that I liked actually quite a bit. It's one of the ones that's always stuck with me over the years. So Tanis goes to him and says, like, hey, man, what can you tell me about this weird broken city you were in? And Riverwind's like, let me see what kind of person you are before I ask. He's like, they call you Tanis Half-Elven. Why is it that you were called half-elf and not half-man? And Tanis is suddenly just like slapped out of nowhere, just like it's the wind knocked out of him. And he's like, because that is one of the most insulting and offensive things you could say, right? Like, why are you a half-elf? Like, not a half-man. And Tanis is sitting there like about to like start just insulting this dude or getting into a fight or whatever. But he realizes that Riverwind is not acting out of malice, but acting as a matter of a judge of character. And so Tanis replies by saying, according to humans, half an elf is but part of a whole being. Half a man is a cripple. And this is one of those ideas where you're like, wow, man, Tanis has to deal with like this kind of weird internalized racism.
Either way, he's not whole, right?
No, yeah, either way, there's no winning for him.
Because elves aren't human, and half a man is a cripple, yeah.
Yeah.
I always wondered if in fantasy, if elves aren't sometimes a stand-in, or any race.
But I think elves are not necessarily a stand-in for a particular race, but for any non-white race. In the sense of like, it is kind of like Tanis' story is definitely the immigrant diaspora story. Like, look, you are a foreigner and your parents were foreigners who like they've instigated this forbidden love to create this thing that should not be this interracial person. And Tanis has had to live his whole life, both as, first off, as half-elf in an elven kingdom. That means that his life is going to burn out much faster than the long-lived elves are, because he's being like dragged down by his human blood, is like, you know, weak blood from these mortals that he's part of. But living with humans, he is automatically othered, right? He's like got pointy ears, he's got slanted eyes, he's got elven blood, and he lives for like twice as long or 3 times as long as your average person does. And so he's got this whole like hang up. That's why he's got this beard, right? Like the first words we hear in this story is, why the beard? You were ugly enough. And Tanis is like, look, man, I had to go to places where elves would get killed, so I had to pretend to be a human. So Tanis is sitting here his whole life, doesn't belong anywhere, doesn't fit in anywhere. And this guy is asking him like, man, why are you calling yourself half-blood and not like, you know, a cripple? And it's like the kind of calculation that Tanis had to do there to sit there and not just lash out is this calculation that those of us who are part of a diaspora or interracial or of a minority group have to do every day, where you sit there and you're like, is this an innocent question or are you really trying to just like egg me on?
It's a microaggression.
It's a microaggression. That's exactly what it is.
In the sense, but also it doesn't matter if it's intentional or not, right?
Yeah. It's still just another weight you have to live with on your life.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if the guy was well-intentioned or not. It still hurts.
Yeah.
But the onus is on him.
I have to bend myself here to sit there and be like, I have to keep the peace. I have to be nice to you because I don't know what you'll do to me. That paragraph, those couple of paragraphs right there were so impactful to me as a kid, just because I was like, oh my God, this dude understands this deal that we have to. I mean, I was so young when I read it, but now going back as a 40-year-old, I'm like, holy crap, this is like informed so much of my life of how to react to people who are like, so no, where are you really from? Like Tanis is like probably gets that all the time. Where are you really from? And he's like, Qualinesti. But I live here in Solace for the past 150 years. Oh, so you're an elf.
Like, I lived here longer than everyone else in this town.
I've lived here longer than your dad has lived here.
If anything, this is my town and you live here, and like,
Yeah.
you're the stranger.
Right. But he's probably had to deal with that his whole life.
Yeah.
And that's just like, and Riverwind sits there and like takes us in, and it's like, all right, that I accept that answer. And he sits and basically explains like this story that we talked about of him being in this crazy broken city. He's like, I was in this horror, and this weird thing rose from the darkness, shrieking and howling. Then out of there came this woman who gave me a staff, healed me, and then sent me on my way.
Okay, I don't want you to tell me now, but do they ever explain who this woman is?
Oh, yeah.
The shiny blue woman. I don't remember them ever saying who the shiny blue woman who hands them the staff is.
They don't tell you directly, but when you get to that, when we get to Zaxaroth, it's very, very clear.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
This was actually the goddess Mishakal herself coming down.
Okay. The goddess of healing, right?
Yeah, the goddess of healing, giving him her staff of healing.
And the big blighted black thing, that's Takesis, right?
No.
Oh.
That's the black dragon that's in Zaxaroth.
Okay.
Kisanth.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to there. That's at the end of this. That's like midway through this book. You'll see.
Spoilers.
After this very poignant and deep discussion, Taz shows up again, running. And he's like, there's clerics coming. A pack of clerics.
But they're not like any clerics I've ever seen.
And Sturm's like, I thought it was like a battalion of goblins. I can handle clerics. Taslov's like, I don't know, man. I've been all over this planet, and I haven't seen any clerics like this. Do you remember what Tika said about those strange men hanging around with Hedrick and Tollus? How they're hooded and dressed in heavy robes? Well, that describes these dudes exactly. And Tanis, they gave me an eerie feeling. Tanis turns to Sturm. Both of them know the Kenders don't feel the emotion of fear and are very sensitive to other creatures' natures. Tanis couldn't remember when the sight of any being on Krynn had ever given Taz an eerie feeling. Kender are immune to fear. That is one of their inherent racial traits in Dragonlance. So if Taz comes up and says, these guys are weird and make me feel eerie, that means something has gone very wrong.
So Sturm's there. He notices that there's a couple of clerics. They're pulling a wagon. All of them are 6 feet tall, which is huge. These are huge people.
Yeah, this is not a small group of, and they're all very hooded and wrapped up.
They have cloaks, they have bandages, they have weird voices, and he starts to kind of interrogate him. He's like, they're like, well, what are you doing on the road? And he's like, I'm just walking to Haven. What are you guys doing on the road? And they're like, well, we lost something. And he's like, what'd you lose? And it was a magic staff. And then they were like, well, how did you, if it was so important to you, why'd you lose it? And they're like, we didn't lose it. It was stolen from us.
Oh, was it now?
And then he's like, well, it's stolen from you. I thought you said, and it's kind of escalating. When they say that they seek a blue staff, Goldmoon just comes out. Because
she's got no guile and no subtlety. She's just like, I have a blue staff.
I can help you find one. The rest of the party kind of joins him on the road, and they're awkwardly there.
Kind of just walking forward, like, are you crazy? What are you doing?
And then the chapter ends.
But let's talk about these clerics for a second. And I'm not going to spoil anything. I just want to read this description here. They were tall, about 6 feet in height. Long robes shrouded their bodies. Hooded cloaks covered their robes. Their feet and their hands were wrapped in cloth like bandages covering leprous wounds. And it's just like, and all the way down to their faces. Because when they look into the hood, all they can see are dark, glittering eyes. And when they talk in common, but they have hollow, lisping, inhuman voice. These are not ye old average clerics here. And when they're talking to each other, they turn and talk in a strange guttural language that nobody's ever heard before. And it's just like, uh-oh.
They're like, oh, our sacred staff of healing. And Sturm's like, healing? A sacred staff of healing would be of great value. How did you come to misplace such a rare and wonderful object? And we did not misplace it, the cleric snarled. Tanis saw the man's wrapped hands clench in anger. It was stolen from our holy order. We tracked the foul thief to a barbarian village in the plains, then lost his trail. There are rumors of strange doings. in Solace, however, and it is there we go.
Yeah.
This is a big world, but like, how does news travel so fast? They left Solace the night before,
Right?
where the strange things happened, and these guys are already on their way there.
Huh. How could that be? But I guess we're going to have to find out next time, because that is the end of this episode of the Chronicles of the Dragonlance podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you will join us next week as we try to figure out who these clerics really are.
Shivan, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
So, if you want to find me talking about my other deep delight passion of Magic the Gathering, you can check out my podcast, Casual Magic, which comes out every Tuesdays and is now on YouTube as well. And you can find me on Twitter at ElectroTal or at GearUpReGears.
And you can find me on Twitter at False Logic. And until next time,
But it's going to get good from here on out, folks.